hard to believe it, but we are coming up on the PlayStation 5's 1 year anniversary.
Which is crazy because it feels like it's been longer than that, actually.
For some people, that still hasn't even started yet this generation. So I thought we'd kind of just do a quick retrospective. Just, what are your thoughts on the PS5 and how is it delivering? Is it living up to expectations? Is it overperforming, underperforming? What is it doing right? What is it doing wrong?
Well, I think we can obviously make a case to that because it's been a pandemic year, it's really hard to gauge that because we haven't even had a true 12-month period of full bore PS5. It's very possible we're not even starting to see like a full proper year of production from anything, right? I mean, in terms of what we got, and like I'm just scrolling down like the top games on Metacritic for the PlayStation 5. So we got Hades at 1, Demon Souls at 2, Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remake at 3, Final Fantasy 7 remake at 4, Disco Elysium at 5, Devil May Cry 5 at 6, Deathloop at 7, It Takes Two at 8, Ratchet and Clank at 9, and Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut at 10. So in your top 10, you have what, like only 2 games that are specific to that console so far? So it's not a great start if you're looking in terms of like generational exclusive, but and I'm sure you and myself will agree on this, just on the basis of having the console, to know what the future of gaming is like, it's in pretty decent hands with the fact that 60 frames is a pretty basic thing now for console gaming at a pretty decent price. The graphic fidelity is really nice, and the gaming experiences that we're getting, I mean, you even go back to Astro's Playroom and just even a little bit of an experiment like that. It's not that this year has been amazing as a first year, but it's the potential that this first year has shown us that is what's more promising than the actual year itself.
Yeah, and that's the word that you hit on right there is I don't necessarily think it's been a great or amazing first year for PlayStation, but it has been a promising one.
We're probably going to look at this year like, oh, this was a really bad launch year, but we're going to be like 6-7 years later being like, but man, this console was great once it got firing.
Exactly, and that's kind of like I don't think we're firing on all cylinders yet. Like
I think the same goes for the Xbox too as well. I think they're both in that same boat where it's just like once we start getting a steady flow going, I think we'll be starting to see like, man, this generation's good.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming across as true, Sony ponies just reviewing a PlayStation 1 year later, but that's
hey,
the
I
one
said
that we have.
Xbox will be good too. I'm being both sidesy.
I'd like to speak to it, but I don't have one. If you want us to do a 1 year review of Xbox and review, support us on Patreon and I'll buy an Xbox. So
well, when did that come out? How far away are we from that, or has it already passed?
I don't know. I'm the PlayStation guy here.
That's a good question. Google, help me.
I think it comes out a week later.
Oh no, it literally was introduced November 10th. Does that mean that I guess it is out too. So I guess we're really just looking at like a generation 1 year anniversary.
All right, yeah. But it's interesting because they have very different trajectories. And so I'm not going to speak to the Xbox just because, I mean, I think they're making some really awesome choices in terms of, Game Pass. And it's really interesting how they've gone 2 different routes.
And I think we've already had that conversation because we recently talked about like Game Pass as a whole and whether it needed to have like the big exclusive games. So we've kind of did most of our chunk on Xbox already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For PlayStation, I find it like they come up with some pretty interesting and, pretty good exclusives. Like having not played it, like Returnal looks cool. I mean, I don't think I'll play it anytime soon. Demon Souls looks good. Spider-Man was awesome. Ratchet and Clank, was gorgeous. Nothing that I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be like the best game of the generation, but like it's a pretty strong start that you've had 2, 3 PlayStation exclusives, maybe I guess 4 in 1 year. Like that's pretty decent, and it's not even like the heavy hitters yet. I mean, shout out to like Insomniac. They've been busting their ass in terms of putting games out, and they've definitely, I think, been carrying this generation, but like yeah, it's not firing on all cylinders yet, and I think there's still some room to grow. But I also don't feel like it's been a huge generational shift either. Like people who are, if you have a PS4 Pro, like I don't feel like you're missing a ton by not having the PlayStation 5. Like I think the coolest thing the PlayStation 5 does is the DualSense.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, you're missing what, like 3 really good games right now. Like most that you're missing is.
Sorry, I'm talking about like graphical improvement, not necessarily the games that you're missing, but just like from a step up generationally. Like I don't feel it as much as I did going from PS3 to PS4.
Yeah, because I mean, the difference here for the most part, because I mean, unless you're real good at catching visual things, like 4K and 1080p, while it is obvious if you really pay attention, but like if you just pass by, you're not always going to catch it right away. But 30 and 60 frames is the one noticeable change. And it's anybody that I know that's owned one of these consoles now is like, man, I can never go back to 30 now that I've played 60. And it's just like, it really does show just how great having that extra ability to get more inputs in and have them more accurate. It's just that's the one thing. And that's why I tell most people, it's like, look, the changes in this new generation are not going to be like PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. It's just not going to be like that anymore. But what you're going to get now is just comfort. It's going to be it's just going to feel better now rather than look better. So don't worry about the visuals anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I think the DualSense is an amazing sort of thing. Like that controller, I feel pushes the boundaries almost as much as like Rumble did back in like the N64 era. And it's like, wow, this is really immersive in the way that like we thought Rumble was when that was a thing.
Yeah, and again, like now some companies still aren't using it. I never asked you, how did you really notice the Rumble when it came to Deathloop, because that was a big feature of them with like the guns jamming and stuff.
See, I never had I never had the gun jamming because I found weapons really quickly that didn't jam. But like, yeah, I felt the difference like pulling the triggers on the different guns, and that was something that I really liked by having that by having that, like, you could feel the difference between a pistol and machine gun and all that stuff, and that's what I really like. I really feel like it's first person shooters and shooting games that really make a difference on that.
Yeah, it's just like a nice touch, more or less. It's not it's not like, oh my god, it's life changing. It's just more like, that's kind of neat. Like it's like, now when you play a game like Astro, that's when you really got like, oh man, there's a lot of potential you can do with this thing. And I think, and again, that's, it started off like that when we all first got our console and we could see what it looks like. And we're not there yet. Not because, it hasn't been achieved, but so much as just we haven't had enough people to take a good shot at it. Like, we're still waiting to see what, like, certain companies come up with. We're waiting to see, like, once they start getting a handle of the software, what they really come up with. Because it's the same thing with every generation, right? Like, people are going to they're going to make a game on there for the first time, get a decent hand of it, but by the time the game's life cycle is coming to an, or not a game's life cycle, a console's life cycle is coming to an end, that's when you get, like, that's when you get, like, your Last of Us Part 2s and your GTA 5s and all those, like, games throughout the generations that just push it to the very brink.
Yeah, like, think about what happened, like, when, like, Naughty Dog in the sense of PlayStation 3, like, think of, like, where we came from Uncharted's Drake's Deception to The Last of Us on the PS3. Or even, it's a bad comparison just because it's not quite at the end, but think of, like, Killzone Shadowfall to Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, because you remember looking at the trailers for the PS4 and seeing Killzone, you're like, oh, that looks neat. But then you played it and we're like, it kind of still plays like a PS3 game. And then you look at Horizon and you're like, whoa. Yeah.
I can now kill a rocket shooting dinosaur. Now, the one thing I want to ask you about is, have you used the 3D audio? Do you find that makes a difference? Because I haven't picked up yet on that 3D audio benefit.
Because I recently got the headset for it, which I don't know if it actually changes anything. I just ended up getting it because I just wanted a better wireless headset for party chat purposing. For the most part, like, if compared to how I used to play games with the Gold Wireless on PS4, it is sort of noticeable, but I don't know if I don't know if it's like really noticeable because the hardware just isn't that strong, or if it's because people aren't using it to its fullest capability yet. So I actually should one of these days go back and play Astro with that headset on and see if how it sounds, because I only played on my TV when I played it the first time.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the sense in the audio what they might have, because I'm sure that they played with it there too. But like, I'm sure, again, like, once a couple more years come in and people start to really mess with it, because again, I imagine if you're putting a game on a new piece of hardware for the first time, you're more trying to like make sure it's stable first, and then you can mess with the gimmicks if you have time. So I imagine if, let's say Insomniac, after like doing 2 or 3 games on there, let's say Spider-Man 3 comes out at the end of its life cycle, they're going to do some real nice things with it because they know what they're working with. So now they can spend extra time on the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I think like we said with a lot of other things, it's more like a work in progress before we get a real answer.
Yeah, because like right now I do have moments where I catch it and I'm like, oh wow, that sounds really cool. But considering the amount of like effort that they're talking about, that they like scoped out how people's ears, like I don't notice it that much yet. So I hope it kind of becomes something. But
I'm
for
willing
now,
to
it's still
assume, like a
lackluster.
lot of other companies, that they did put their work in. It's just nobody's really put a lot of work into it in their games yet.
Mhm.
But I mean, again, like if we have the same conversation a few years later, then we'll know the actual answer to that question. But I think because the sheer like lack of games that have come out exclusively for that console, we haven't quite seen it being pushed yet. I think once we start seeing a lot more exclusives, same goes with the Series X. Once we start seeing a lot more exclusives for these two consoles, we'll start to get a better sense of what happens when this hardware is pushed. Because when you're making a game for both PS5 and PS4, you're not going to be able to push the PS5 version as hard as you can, because you still got to make a version that's going to be working on the prior generation.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up real quick, we don't have to go too long into it, but like, what's the one game that you recommend for people on PS5? Like, what's the best game that PS5 offers?
Well, the unfortunate part is I haven't played one of them that's exclusive to it yet, but I guess I would say being able to play Final Fantasy VII Remake with the actual like graphics that it has. I guess Miles Morales also counts too, because the loading times in an open world is a pretty big deal. I think those are the two I'd go with. But like from what I've heard from people, you go Ratchet or you go Demon Souls if you're into the harder stuff. If you're casual, you go Ratchet. If you're into the hard stuff, you go Demon Souls.
Yeah, I feel like if you're going for graphical fidelity, you go Ratchet.
Yeah, if you really just want to be blown away. I mean, personally, I just say get the console and play Astros at this point.
That was going to actually be my thing.
Because that's honestly your best bet.
Astro is the best game on that system so far in terms of just showing what the console's capable
You know what
of.
actually does make me really sad that as I keep scrolling down on Metacritic, it's not showing up, which is it's 32. It's only at an 83. That is garbage. Whoever reviewed that game and didn't give it a 10 is just losing it.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic game. It's definitely like when you get a PS5, that is the first thing you should boot up and play. You don't even have to go buy a game. Just go play.
You should be giving it a 10 out of 10 anyway, because it comes free with a console.
Yeah. Best game, and it's free.
It's a free game that comes with your console, and it's not even bad.
Yeah.
That's already a win.
Yeah. Listeners, you know what? On the Discord, let us know what your experience has been so far with the PS5, if you've been able to get one. And what is you think the best game so far on that console? And if you're an Xbox player, same thing. What's the best game on the Xbox right now?